Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better.
Courage is critical. It's empowerment. With respect to living well, is sine qua non. On the log energy scale of human consciousness from 1 to 1,000, developed by David R. Hawkins, M.D., Ph.D., the most important division is between 199 and below and 200 and above. Courage calibrates at 200. In this playlist, I've introduced that scale, for example, videos number 10 and 38 through 45, and encouraged you to use it for yourself. Why? It's a corrective for the epistemological difficulty that is innate to our human condition. Namely, we have no intrinsic way of telling the difference between a true proposition and one that isn't true. The method of muscle testing has been used by energy healers for decades, if not for centuries. What Dr. Hawkins did initially was to realize that it's applicable to far more than the health of our bodies. He and his students then used muscle testing to develop a useful way to use it, namely the map of consciousness. Specifically, it can be used to determine whether or not any statement is true. There are some qualifications about using it, and one caveat on what statements it can be used for, namely, it cannot be used for statements about the future. That, though, makes sense. Since it isn't real, there is yet no future truth. Again, to think, judge, conceptualize is to use concepts, principles of classification, to sort forms, objects, things, into different classes by noticing relevant similarities and differences. Of course, that's useful. However, being incessantly attached to thinking is counterproductive because, since it logically guarantees separation, it makes holistic awareness impossible. Since separation always underlies dissatisfaction, addiction to thinking condemns us to perpetual dissatisfaction. Our tendency is to separate forms into good, valuable, useful, desirable, and bad, not valuable, useless, undesirable. That's like thinking of temperature as being either hot or cold. Actually, heat and cold are on the same scale. Cold is simply the absence of heat. It's a matter of degrees, which we measure using a thermometer. Though we may consider them as having different degrees of value depending upon what our purpose is, one thermometer reading isn't intrinsically better than another. Similarly, bad is simply the absence of good. It's a matter of degrees, which we're able to measure using that log energy scale. Though we may consider them as having different degrees of value depending upon what our purpose is, one reading on the scale isn't intrinsically better than another. Our thoughts, beliefs, emotions, attitudes, and positionalities, fundamental assumptions, in short, our mindsets, determine how we experience the world. Mindsets are stratified on the scale in terms of their energy levels. It turns out that the different stratifications correlate to how happy we are. We are less happy with lower mindsets and happier with higher mindsets. Again, one mindset isn't intrinsically better than another. They are, though, different in terms of their quantity of energy, which correlates to how happy or unhappy we are with our lives. Again, instead of thinking of heaven and hell as completely different categories, they're actually on the same scale. Hell is having a personal calibration of 199 or lower. Heaven is having a personal calibration of 600 or higher, which are the levels of sagehood. So, there are major paradigm shifts at levels 200 and 600. Those with personal calibrations in the 200s and 300s live in between heaven and hell. There's also a paradigm shift at 400, which is the shift to the predominance of reason, intellect, thought, away from emotionalized egocentricity. The universe has an infinite amount of energy. Zero simply means no energy. Everything else in the universe, including every physical body, be it solid, liquid, gas, or plasma, and every thought, has an energy level. humans are unable to calibrate energy levels higher than 1,000. We humans have a dual nature. As nearly everyone understands, we're both matter and spirit. Relating that fundamental division to the scale, what is material calibrates from 1 to 499, and what is spiritual calibrates from 500 to 1,000. The material world is objective and linear. The spiritual world is subjective and nonlinear. So, there's also a major paradigm shift at 500. Although love becomes a possibility at level 200, it becomes decisive at level 500 and above. The levels from 200 to 1000 are levels that increase with respect to love. Again, sages are the best lovers. There is no love at levels 199 and below. Our egos are biological inheritances that are all about survival. Mindsets below 200 are wholly self-interested and competitive. Since love is not about taking, but about giving, it only can occur when there is recognition of the value of others. That recognition occurs at level 200, which is a level at which attachment to our egoic selves begins to diminish. If you understand the value of love, then you understand why having a personal calibration of 200 or higher is important. Quote, crossing over level 200 is the most critical step in the evolution of human consciousness, end quote. From Dr. Hawkins's Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. There are different kinds of courage, but there's only one kind relevant here, namely the courage of accepting responsibility for the quality of one's life. If you're accountable for the quality of your own life, your personal calibration is at level 200 or higher. What that means is that you're willing to test new approaches when confronted with the vicissitudes of life. You're not stuck to wallow indefinitely in endless egocentricity. You're willing to grow and educate yourself about your options. The approval of others has become less important than integrity and self-honesty. In short, you're empowered. You're productive. You put as much or more energy into the world as you take from it. The lower emotions like fear, anger, and grief are now unwelcome. It's no wonder that everyone who calibrates at 200 or higher is happier than anyone at 199 or lower. If you're still stuck below 199, I encourage you to commit yourself to accepting responsibility for the quality of your life, and assure you that, if you do, you'll quickly begin to feel better. If you're already at 200 or higher, congratulations. You're on your way. Let's end emotional distress.